your dessert. We're going to begin this afternoon's program, and it's a real pleasure and honor for me to introduce our first speaker, Hilary Pennington. Hilary is the Director of Education, Postsecondary Success, and Special Initiatives in the United States program at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And Hilary, thank you very much for traveling across the country to be with us today. She has also served as a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress and as the vice chair and co-founder of Jobs for the Future. And I remember, Hilary, when I started at CED a little over 14 years ago, the chairman of CED at the time was Frank Doyle, and Frank hired me. And I remember very shortly after joining CED, Frank said to me, "You've got to meet and get to know Hilary Pennington." And I think Frank, who served on your board, made that connection. And so I personally want to express my appreciation for your many years of friendship and also your support of CED, both at Jobs for the Future, and I think we've had an opportunity to partner over the years in different events and around different policy initiatives. So I thank you for your support for CED over many years, including now at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and for the foundation's generous support of our post-secondary education work. We're taking it very seriously. As I said, it's a labor of love. We have many trustees who are in the room this afternoon who are members of that subcommittee. So I know they want to hear very much what you have to say. So thank you again for joining us. You honor us, and it's a privilege to turn the floor over to Hilary Pennington. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie, my good friend, for that wonderful introduction. And it's great to be part of the warm-up act for Carl Camden. But seriously, I'm so glad to be here, and we are so glad to support CED's work on this incredibly important issue of post-secondary success. So I want to start by sharing some facts with you. First, there are more people in America today who have some college credit but no degree than there are people with college degrees. The cost of college is rising at twice the rate of the cost of healthcare. Only about half of full-time students who start four-year BA degree programs finish in 6 years. What we used to call non-traditional students, working part-time students, now are 70% of college students in America. And just this year, we passed a significant milestone where the price at over 100 private colleges has now exceeded $51,000 a year. As a point of comparison, the median family income in the United States is $49,000 a year. The Federal Reserve Bank, as Charlie mentioned, just reported that for the first time ever, Americans owe more than $1 trillion in student loans, more than the country's combined credit card debt. Students are taking out $100 billion in loans a year, and their default rate is going up. So we think of higher education as the great equalizer, the engine of upward mobility in America. But if you were to look around an average 100-person classroom at any of the top 146 colleges in the United States, the jewels of the crown that we pride ourselves on as our higher education system, only 3 students in those classrooms would come from the lowest economic quartile. 74 students would come from the richest quartile, families with average incomes of over $135,000 a year. So these discrete facts begin to coalesce into an image of American higher education that is making economic success less attainable in a nation with less economic mobility. And I would submit to you that this is not only bad for students, it's bad for institutions of higher education, and it's bad for all of us. Quite simply, and you all know this, a post-secondary degree, whether it's an apprenticeship, a one-year certificate, a 2-year degree, or a BA degree, is the only lever capable of simultaneously lifting an individual's economic prospects and our national economy. As you well know, it's not just well-paying jobs that are increasingly reserved for the college-educated, it's most jobs. By 2018, 63% of all jobs in the US will require some post-secondary education. And so if I do one thing today in these very short remarks, I want to disabuse you of a notion that has quietly become entrenched in our national thinking, that secondary education is a public good and higher education is a private good. Every piece of evidence that we have says higher education is a public good, not only for the sake of students, but for the sake of our nation. And if you look at our country's demographic shifts and the demands of our economy and our democracy, we have to get serious about expanding who gets a post-secondary degree, which means increasing both access and success for traditionally underrepresented students who have previously been shut out by high price tags and inconvenient structures. Because if we can't reach these students, we will never achieve the number of degrees that our economy needs. So higher education also, let's just say, is a public good supported by massive public investment. Federal, state, and local governments spend at least $250 billion a year on higher education every year. So, as throughout our history, higher education needs now in this time to innovate, to become both more accessible and more affordable and more effective. It has to evolve to meet three challenges that will help increase student success, especially among lower income students, and thereby bring it back to reclaiming its goal as a public good. And those three, from our point of view, are first, to reduce the cost per enrolled student. Second, to shorten the average time to credential so that many more students complete degrees at least on time, if not faster. And finally, as you heard this morning, to improve learning and student engagement. So at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we are working with partners around the country, including CED, to improve outcomes against each of these challenges. We focus our grant making primarily on community colleges, the neglected workhorse of higher education, and on three broad areas of investment. The first one is to fund innovations that will help more students start college with momentum and make it to the finish line. And there we are especially focused on improving developmental education, remedial education, and the transition from high school to college so that more students start well prepared and rapidly accumulate credits that count towards degrees. Second area of our investment is funding R&D. Particularly, this is important in the under-resourced community college sector. But R&D to deepen and improve learning, primarily by thinking and working on how you can use technology towards that end. So we're funding institutions to develop much smarter things that you would, as business leaders, recognize as almost like customer relationship management systems, learner relationship management systems, diagnostic tests that cannot just tell you that a student falls behind and needs to be placed in a remedial course, but where they fell behind and what particular skills they need remediation in. Much more powerful and effective courseware that blends technology and faculty and everything we know about cognition and learning so that students have the chance to practice concepts and master them before they move on from one class to the next. And new delivery models, like the ones that you heard Bob Mendenhall talk about, Western Governors University and others. The new CUNY community college that's being started here in New York City would be another example. And then finally, we are working to help create incentives that reward college success. And I want to close with just a couple of words about this, because I think this is a place where you, as business leaders, can make a unique difference. We all know that autonomy in higher education is very valued and deep and incredibly important. And we respect that autonomy, as I know CED does. We don't want to dismantle what makes our system of higher education great. But the truth is that change is hard, and institutional change is really hard. And that's one reason why completion rates in America have not changed at all in the last 30 years, despite massive increases in funding for higher education. And part of that reason is that today's fiscal and regulatory and reputational incentives don't really reward colleges for increased completion or for serving non-traditional student populations with more complex learning needs. And we need an intentional, collective effort if we have any hope in seeding much-needed change. So if you ask yourself, how do you get higher education to change? There are two really important levers that are underutilized, and those are reputation and resources. What if rating systems like the US News and World Report rewarded schools as much on increased graduation rates as they do on lower acceptance rates? Or larger financial aid expenditures rather than larger endowments? For example, right now, colleges have an incentive to leverage their institutional aid, precious resources of financial aid, to attract higher performing students. Private campuses award about twice as much in institutional grants to families in the top income quartile as they do to families in the lowest income quartile. And actions like these should diminish rather than enhance their reputations. And you can play a role in helping make these kinds of issues more visible. When it comes to resources, what if federal and state investments were pegged to retention and completion instead of just enrollments? Right now, the vast majority of federal and state aid programs and policies are based purely on funding enrollments. And we need to flip this model to reward performance and to create an equally powerful incentive, not just to get students in, but to get them through. And to do that, we need information, because we can't improve if we don't know how we're doing now, or where we need to go, and what strategies are the most effective for getting from here to there. And building on the pioneering work of Pat Callan and all that he's done with measuring up and a whole range of other things over the course of many years at the center, there are now states and places beginning to ask harder questions and say we need much more transparent data about outcomes for students as we make our investment decisions. And some of them are already taking what they've learned and using it to inform policy and practice. Tennessee, for one example, ties fundings to colleges for the number of students who graduate, not just how many enroll. And Washington State, where I live, has a student achievement initiative in the community college system that gives colleges extra money for improving their performance in how many students they move towards degree completion by helping students achieve what their research shows them are key momentum points, like the numbers of credits they complete in their first 2 semesters at college, or staying for 3 consecutive semesters, which they have the data to tell them means that these students will be more likely to graduate. So imagine what the future could look like if we could focus the energies of higher education and all the power of its innovation on these kinds of challenges of student success. And if our post-secondary system were deliberately designed so that people from all walks of life can get the skills they need in the ways they need to achieve them in a reasonable time and at a reasonable cost. This wouldn't just be revolutionary for students and their families, it would be revolutionary for our nation. It would shift our system to one that produces graduates who make our economy more competitive and our democracy stronger. So we think that this is where we need all of you in this room and the leadership of CED. We need you to be part of demanding and encouraging and supporting the kinds of innovation in higher education that will help our system produce more degrees at a more reasonable time and cost with deeper learning. And to say to higher education, those 3 things can and have to happen together. Working on one does not need to diminish the others. You can improve quality and reduce cost and improve completion rates together. So I know that improving post-secondary completion is something to which CED is deeply committed. It's why we're thrilled to support your launch of the Business Champions for Post-Secondary Success, Student Success Initiative. Because we agree that engaged business leaders can play a huge role in helping to increase the numbers of students who get the credentials that they need and our economy needs them to have. You can help young people get the message to work hard to achieve key momentum points. Most of them, for example, don't realize that if they don't enroll in college the semester after they graduate from high school, their chances of ever getting a BA to go down by 50%. So if they're low income and their families think that they need to work for a year or 2 to save some money to go to college, they're making decisions that hurt them later. If they wait to enroll for another year, their chances go down by another 50%. And if they wait till they're 26 years old to enroll in a BA program, their chances of ever getting a BA are 3%. So you can help get the messages like that out to students and their family. You can have conversations with career service offices and academic deans about what it is you need in graduates. You can share lessons you've learned from your own training and development programs to emphasize the outcomes you seek and the delivery models that help achieve them. And most important, you have the standing to make the case to your alma maters and to state legislatures that the business community needs higher education to admit underrepresented students and dramatically improve their completion, that the success of your companies and our nation's economy depends on it. It will take both a moral and an economic imperative to move this issue to the forefront of our national agenda, and you have the standing to provide both. In so doing, you can change the collegiate conversation, and once we change the conversation, we can change the future. So thank you.